it's like saying going to a Ferrari factory and asking the designer of the Ferrari to design, just sketch a Ferrari, and then coming back to a factory in India, like a Tata Nano or somebody, and telling them to produce the same Ferrari. It never works because it's the entire experience. I feel architects should not do that. Architect is that's what they say, it's an old man's profession because you don't get fame until you're 60 or 80 years old, like Philip Johnson, and then sometimes you get the Pritzker Prize after you're dead. I mean, that's how architecture is. It's really a long profession because buildings, they're not something that you can really do it quick. Architecture in many ways is about paying your dues. You have to be in the profession for a while to prove your point. The iconic architects in the world, whether it be Richard Meyer, who I worked for a decade, or even Norman Foster, Zaha Hadid, they paid their dues, I guess. Everybody has to, I mean, so until you get recognized. And there is a big luck factor. That was a beautiful journey because I always liked contemporary architecture, and he was the pioneer in one of the best modernism architecture works that you could see today. And I was always a fan of his work back when I was studying at JJ, and finally ended up working with him for over a decade. And then finally back in 2008, me and my wife Kiran was also an architect. We decided to start our own practice, and we started an office in Los Angeles, and we have two offices now, one in Bombay, which is a bigger office, and one in Los Angeles, which is the design office. So I feel very fortunate being trained under some really good masters, because in the early part of your career, it's always important to be trained, or rather what used to be called as an apprenticeship, where you get trained under these masters, and that I think I was very fortunate to be trained under Richard Meyer for that long. It really helps to understand design in a very different perspective. It is not about academics anymore, it's about practicality, it's about how you see architecture in a different light, and over time you realize that your senses are refined, and you don't even come to know when that happens. It takes, I would say, it takes about a good 4 to 5 years, even before you start realizing that you're able to comprehend a project very easily and understand plan sections, elevations, and the 3D form besides the program of the project. What I learned from working with Richard Meyer was keep it small and keep the quality good, and that way we're able to control the design very carefully and very in a focused way. Because when you start expanding that big, you may not have time to really focus on all the projects. Then you have to hire senior project managers, then the design gets diluted because it's not by the same master. So in that sense, we don't pretend to take on roles as executive architects for some other architectural firm back in the US. The good part is we have a practice back in the US as well as in India. So we are able to get that international experience directly to India, as opposed to just hiring the design architect there and then being executive architect for somebody else. It never works that way because it's like saying going to a Ferrari factory and asking the designer of the Ferrari to design, just sketch a Ferrari, and then coming back to a factory in India, like a Tata Nano or somebody, and telling them to produce the same Ferrari. It never works because it's the entire experience. I feel architects should not do that. It has to be a complete experience, including the interiors, landscape. The architect, the main architect, has to dictate how this whole thing flows from one to the other. That is why if you look at the work of your masters, iconic masters, whether it is Ando, Richard Myers, they have a thought process where it flows from this concept sketch all the way to the interiors, all the way through the landscape, and it's the entire feel. It's like driving a Ferrari. It is not subdivided into somebody else's work. Seeing on the interiors and then the landscape. I feel the architect has to be the design architect, and that's how it works best. Here in India, what I've seen is they're smitten by the marketing, or whatever we call as the Bollywood effect. So there is a lot of developers who use big name interior designers just to do their work, but ignore to mention the architect actually, who is the maestro of the whole project. And but it's the marketing gig. I mean, the developers like the fact to push all these foreign names out there, thinking that people would recognize. But in the US, this would be a lawsuit actually, if you ask me. I mean, you cannot take somebody else's pictures or somebody else's exterior images and put it on your website and call as if you have done the design. That's not allowed. I mean, that's unethical in my practice and to my knowledge. I guess the big difference lies in the fact that back in the US, it's a very mature market. People understand the role of a master planner or an architect. There is a lot of thought process put into the program. I mean, a lot of people are involved in the programming process, where you really define the project, where you define the goals of the project, what you want to achieve, the sustainability, the market studies, the feasibility studies. So people spend a lot of time defining and outlining what the goals of the project should be. What I find here is more of a sort of an ad hoc approach, where they just show you a piece of land, and then the architect actually starts suggesting that we could do this or we could do that, and then finally there are a lot of changes along the way, and that changes take so much time because that thought was not put ahead of time. And we have a constant moving targets in India that really doesn't help the process. We try to achieve our goals the same way as we would have done in the United States. We as architects have to be very conscious that the end product cannot suffer. It doesn't matter what the journey has been. We always try to deliver the best, because at the end of the day, your name is on the project and people will relate that project with your name on it. So we have to do a good job.